Hey guys, what's going on? It's Fern, and today we're going to be talking about one of my more favorite aspects of being a barber, and that is going over shear work. We're going to talk about the differences between the different types of shears and what their functionality is versus what they're good for, and everything in between. So thank you so much for watching. Let's get into it. Alright guys, so these are the scissors that I use for my everyday setup and use. This is a 7-inch shear. This is a 5.5-inch shear. This is a texturizing shear, and this is a thinning shear. The first three are from a company based out of England called Hunt and Hustle. The last one is the tapering shear, which is from 4420. This one has been in the market for probably about 70 years at the very least, so this one you definitely know works well. These other three are a fairly new company, but as far as the shears go, these are working pretty well. We're going to get into each one of these and what the functionality is. Alright guys, so we're going to start talking about the shears. Basically, I'm going to go to the order in which I use them, which is from the first time I pick up a scissor to pretty much the last time, and do everything in between. So first off the bat, we have the 7-inch stag from Hunt and Hustle. As you guys can see, this is a fairly big scissor. More so the length comes from the point of the joint right here in the scissor to the end of the blade. So the whole thing is, about 7 inches, but usually with the blade, this is actually about 5, give or take. So why such a big scissor? The reason behind a big scissor is because if you're doing not clip over comb, but scissor over comb rather, which is basically the same thing, you're just using a different tool, you want to get through, haircut fairly easily, especially if it's a all scissor cut. So the reason why you would use one of these as opposed to the 5.5-inch shear is because by using the 7-inch shear, it's going to take going through all those subsections and all that way easier. So you're going to basically be going through this thing and shaving off a good few minutes. And the reason behind that is because when you use the 7-inch shear, and I'm going to show you guys on a bright comb so you guys can see. When you're using the 7-inch shear, you're almost utilizing that entire length of the comb right here. And as if you're only using, like, say, a 5.5-inch or less, what you're only doing is utilizing half. So if your comb, if the comb represents a subsection of a hair, like on the side or the top or whatever, what you're able to do is go through almost that entire length in just one shot like that, So again, it makes going through the haircut really easy when you're just going through and using the bigger shear. Now, a basic thing that they always teach you in hair school is don't cut past your second knuckle. And then you could ask any barber, any hairstylist out there, you could always look over here. It's always gnarled up, scarred, whatever. We don't tend to listen, so myself included, definitely guilty of that. So when you're taking up a subsection, what you want to do is just cut to about here. Now, especially with a bigger shear like a 6.5 or 7-inch shear, do not go past your second knuckle for sure, or you'll be taking a chunk out of your finger or hand, or worse. It's really gross, looks like a murder scene. I've seen it, it ain't pretty. Don't do it, guys. So especially with the bigger shear, go slow, go easy, take your time, and be sure to utilize that full length of the comb. This is the Moneymaker model from Hunt and Hustle. I don't know if you guys can see, it's got the little $sign right there. So the 5.5 shear, this is basically your detailing shear. Now what that means is, as you're going through the top of the hair, if you're doing scissor over comb up top, you could scoop, you could get in, and especially for the top, it's a lot easier to get in there. This is basically, like I said, going to be your fine detail comb. You can do a scissor over comb haircut with this, however, it's going to take you a lot longer of a time. And that is simply because, as you guys can see, as opposed to the 7-inch shear, this takes up a lot less space on the comb. So you're going to be going through your subsections and all that, and it is going to take you a while to actually cut through there. Whereas if you have a longer shear in one swipe, you could basically do the entire length of the comb. So what I tend to typically do is I only really use this, like I said, guys, for just the top. It's a lot easier to get in there as far as cutting, and doing like all your detail work and all that. 5.5 shear is obviously great if you're doing a blunt cut. Simply all that means is if you have your subsection of hair, that just means you're going in straight, cutting it straight across. if you're going in and somebody wants like a textured haircut and all that, what you're going to do is you're going to point cut, and it is a lot easier to point cut with a 5.5 shear versus a 7 shear, because you have way more control with a 5.5, just in being that it's smaller and it's a lot more maneuverable. Guys, when I first started cutting hair, I was scared to death of doing point cutting, for the simple reason that it just feels awkward. And again, you're not really in, when you're just doing a blunt cut, you go in, you cut, and that's it. Nothing fancy. When you do a point cut, there's a lot of different things kind of going on. You're going in and you're snipping your hair as you're doing that, and it's a lot more awkward, and it's definitely a lot less control, which is, especially as a beginning barber or hairstylist, something that you don't feel comfortable doing, because you're like, oh man, like, you know, I'm taking a chunk out of my finger for sure, you know? So if you have the smaller scissor, it's a lot easier to do that. 11 years into the game, I can tell you I feel way more confident doing point cutting, especially with something, you know, like a 5.5 shear, than I do with the 7-inch shear. Also, another thing too is, especially when it comes to kids, you don't want to be using a big scissor like that with a 7-inch shear. Definitely want to use a 5.5. My uncle always said cutting kids' hair is like going fishing. You got to go with them. They move, you know. You don't want to have a big shear and then like, you know, chop off a piece of their ear or something like that. Not a good day for anybody, and definitely don't want to do that. So things are a lot easier with the smaller shears. And like I said, this is really good for a detailer. You can use, for sure, a smaller scissor for an entire haircut. I've done it before. It just takes you a little bit longer. But again, especially if you're new, don't worry about speed. It might take you a little longer, but speed will come over time. And also, what I've been doing with these as of late, especially to add a little extra texture to it, is that these are pretty actually good for slide cutting. And what that means is when you hold the hair out, you can just ever so slightly kind of slide the hair or the scissor down, and it'll cut the hair to give it that kind of jagged look to it. You know, not every shear, be it 5-inch or 7-inch or whatever, is going to be able to do that. Some are better than others from my experience. There are specifically slide cutting scissors, but I don't think you necessarily need a specific scissor just to be able to do that. Guys, when you have your subsection up here and you start cutting and the hair starts bending, that means that either your tension screw is too tight, or it means that your shears are starting to dull. Either way, if you start to notice a little bit more, either get them sharpened or maybe just loosen the screw, and they should hopefully cut better. Worst case scenario, you just got to get a different pair of shears. All right, let's go on to the next one. So in my hand right now, these are the texturizing shears from Hunt and Hustle. They are texturizing shears for the reason that, if you guys can see on the bottom over here on the teeth, yeah, just like that, you guys can see they're actually kind of jagged as opposed to going straight. Now these are going to take out bulk as well as the thinning shear. However, with the texturizing shears, because they kind of have that jagged edge to the teeth, that's going to add some extra texturizing in there when you get in for a haircut. So if you have straighter hair, what these are really good for is just kind of adding a little bit more movement and a little bit more of an interesting look to your hair if it's pretty much pinned straight. The thing with these things though, guys, is you do not want to get in there and do like multiple snips for a subsection, because when you take a subsection in there, you want to do about 2 snips. If you do use the thinning shears, be very, very gingerly, because if you use these things too much, you can actually create holes in the haircut, and that's not a good thing. So thinning shears as well as texturizing shears don't take length out. What they do is they take out bulk, and as I said with these specifically texture the hair as opposed to just taking the bulk out. I really do like these things. However, the thing with these, again, is what you guys want to do is when you have a subsection, especially on the top of your hair, you just really want to just kind of get the ends, and that'll kind of give it that little bit of a jagged look. If you use it more towards the root, you'll definitely start creating holes in the haircut, and that's not a good thing. It's not gonna be too fun for the guys who are trying to grow that out, you know? All right, so let's talk about the last one, the actual thinning shear. All right, guys, so now talking about the last shear, which is the 4420 taper shear. As you guys can see, this is even a bit more boxier looking than the texturizing shear. And that is because these guys have been around I mean, at least probably 70 years or something. I remember my uncle always saying that he always used to use these, and they're one of the best thinning shears I've ever pretty much on the market. And he's been cutting hair a long time. He definitely knows what he's talking about. So, as opposed to the texturizing shear, as you guys can see on the bottom teeth there, they are straight. So what that means is when you go in and you cut your hair, it's going to be for sure a lot more even, but you're definitely taking a bit of bulk out there. These are really, really good, especially when you're doing scissor over comb on the bottom of somebody's hair to kind of get those blends on the tapers out. If you have a little bit of a weight line, these things are exceptionally good for taking that weight line out. Also, another thing too is what you do not want to do, again, as I said with the texturizing shear, is you don't want to use a thinning shear too much on somebody's head. If somebody has like really, really thick hair and you want to take a lot of that bulk out so that it lays a little bit better, as well as it's a little bit cooler for that person, if they ask for it, cool. But again, be gingerly about it. You know, 2 snips here, 2 snips here, 2 snips here, call it a day on average. If somebody's got crazy thick hair, they want a lot of that bulk out, then you can kind of go, you know, in there, you know, a little bit more, you know, just kind of take out some of that bulk and whatnot. So generally speaking, don't want to use this too much unless it's an annoying customer, in which case, as the pissed off barber says, bash them with the thinners for sure. No, I'm just kidding, guys. You don't want to do that. So, as I mentioned, guys, before, most of this stuff can be found on wbbarbersupply.com, which again, I'll put right over here. Use promo code MARKFERNICOLA right over here. Take 10% off of your order. Guys, again, half the fun with this stuff is wanting to just, you know, figure out what tools work for you and what works best for your clientele. Tons of different companies out there. You know, again, word of advice is don't get a top of the line shear unless you can really afford that. There are some brands out there which, like, you know, I mean, we all know who we're talking about. Like some of the, I mean, the baseline for these shears, guys, start at like $500. That's a lot of money, you know, for something that you're liable to drop and probably break and yada yada. So there's a lot more affordable options out there. What I love about the Hunt and Hustle company that I got my stuff from is I got basically these 2 shears for the price of one of almost any other companies. And it was still a lot cheaper than that one shear. So guys, you know, again, do what's best for you and for your budget and for your clientele. If you want that top of the line scissor, get it. Again, just be aware, these things all came out of the same factory. They basically all cut. You can get a $50 Sally's special of the week shear, and it cuts just as well as a $1,000 shear. It might not last as long, but it's still going to cut hair. And again, you got to do what is best for you, your budget, and most importantly, your client. So guys, that basically concludes the video. Thank you so much for watching. As always, we're going to keep these coming, and hope everybody has a wonderful day. Take care. Are just in the prime spot to where it's that sweet spot for when you cut. It's not going to like bend the hair or anything like that. When you start bending, oh, fuck. God damn it. I'm a man. Always something.